the work she does as a volunteer. With her knowledge and simple intervention, she empowers the uninsured people of Summit and Wasatch County to achieve better oral health. Marielle comes to us with a rich and varied experience. After obtaining her doctorate in dental medicine with honors, she started her career at St. Justine Hospital for Children in Montreal. She then went into private practice alternately as an associate and as an owner in a mixture of group and solo clinics. During those years, she completed all of the core courses, plus specialty courses in occlusion and aesthetics at the world-renowned Pankey Institute for Advanced Dental Education. Well, she also achieved certification in CAMRA, Care Management by Risk Assessment from the University of California in San Francisco, and in Chronic Disease Prevention from the University of Toronto. Marielle is currently working on a nutrition certification and has just obtained a certificate in social entrepreneurship from the University of Pennsylvania. With a transformation from dentist to social entrepreneur, she brings to Park City a fresh perspective on oral health built on a strong foundation of hands-on experience, a lifetime of studies, and a vision for a community embracing oral health as an essential component of overall health. This morning, she will deliver a speech from the Professional Speaker Manual, the keynote address. Her main objectives for the speech is to develop a speech style and delivery that effectively inspires and moves the audience to adopt her views. This is a dress rehearsal for a presentation she will be delivering this evening at the beginning of a workshop on sugar addiction. The title of her speech is Sugar and Oral Health, How Teeth Can Be Early Predictors of a Problem. Speech time, 15 to 20 minutes. Marielle, Pariseau.
No, I don't. Could someone dim the lights? Good morning. This is such perfect timing. I had no idea you were going to talk about health and nutrition. Thank you. And Fred about responsibility and duty. So I'm going to talk today about sugar and oral health and how teeth can become early predictors of a much bigger problem. If you saw Fed Up as part of the Sundance Film Festival earlier this year, you heard Mark Hyman make this statement. Yes, sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine, believe it or not. It is extremely difficult to give up sugar, not only because it's more addictive than cocaine, but because it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere. He talks about sugar lighting the brain like a pinball machine. Well, today I'd like to share my own pinball machine, how my brain lights up when I think of sugar and oral health. And I'd like you to focus on this side of the screen, all on the very sad statistics regarding oral health, or lack of oral health. It is the 5th most prevalent disease. It's more prevalent disease in childhood. It is 5 times more prevalent than asthma. By the time children in USA reach 5 years of age, 35% of them have tooth decay in their mouth. There's 25% of people in USA walking around with untreated disease. It causes us to spend so much money, to lose hours of school, hours of work, spending money in hospital admissions. Last year, with children under 6 years of age only, we spent in USA $1.55 billion treating tooth decay, only for children under 6. And this figure does not include the $10,000 per child of hospital fees that are associated with all the children who needed to be treated in the OR under general anesthesia. What boggles my mind is it's preventable. It's preventable. So what are we missing? For one thing, I think most people don't know that this disease is transmissible, mostly from mother to child, That's a vertical type of transmission. It can also be transmitted from other caregivers. It can also be transmitted horizontally from siblings and playmates. But what are we missing? What parts of our duties and responsibilities are we missing over here? And this has become my new focus of interest right now. I'm working very hard to solve this piece of the puzzle, but today I'm going to focus on the excessive consumption of sugar, and I think Craig and we should work together. We're going to begin with 3 very simple equations that I want you to remember. The first one is sugar plus bacteria equals acid. When it comes to oral health, it doesn't matter what kind of sugar you consume, whether it's glucose, fructose, lactose, whatever O's you put through your mouth. If it's a sugar, it counts all the same, whether it comes from white granulated, super refined sugar with 0 nutritional value, or the organic maple syrup from your neighbor's farm. It's all sugar, and they all affect your oral health. When we talk about bacteria, we're going to focus mainly on the 2 big culprits, Streptococcus mutans and Lactobacillus. There are other bacteria involved in causing acid, but these are the 2 main culprits. Second equation, acid plus teeth equals caries. I'm going to talk about caries and tooth decay as 2 separate entities, but they go together. You're probably a lot more familiar with tooth decay or a cavity. Caries is the disease process that eventually leads to tooth decay or a cavity, which is itself the end product of the process called caries. So, what happens in your mouth when you consume too much sugar? Well, this is what happens. Enamel, the hardest tissue in your whole body, more than twice as hard as your bones, starts melting down as a result of constant acid attack. Something to think about. Maybe we need to pay more attention to our teeth. And here's the third and last equation. The third and last equation. Caries equals imbalance. And this is why it's really important to start paying more attention to oral health. Because by the time you are diagnosed with a cavity by your dentist, the disease process called caries, which is induced by excessive consumption of sugar that causes acid because of the bacteria, that disease has been present in your mouth or in your child's mouth for a long, long time. And we know that the factors or the risk factors for caries are the same as for obesity, cardiovascular diseases, diabetes. We need to pay attention. Acid-producing bacteria form less than 1% of the total oral microbiome, but they behave like terrorists. What happens is those bacteria really love sugar, and when they metabolize sugar, they produce acid. What's interesting about these bacteria is that they are acidogenic and acidophilic. What this means in plain English is they produce acid, and they love to live in it. In a healthy oral microbiome, we have up to 400 different species of bacteria. When we analyze the microbiome of people who are very unhealthy with their mouth, they have a lot of caries, we see as little as 40 different species of bacteria. For health, it is very important to maintain diversity in the microbiome. When you start eating too much sugar, the acidogenic, acidophilic bacteria, as they produce more and more acid, they push away the other healthy bacteria that you want to maintain in your mouth, and you end up having more and more and more of the harmful bacteria in your mouth. Another thing that I hear so often, and I've heard it all along in my career, is, oh, I was born with soft teeth. My enamel is soft. My mother had soft enamel, and I inherited that from her. Well, the reality is, scientifically, is almost all children are born with perfect enamel. There are very, very few cases of children born with defective enamel that tends to decay easily. What happens is the bacteria are transmitted from the mother and the child inherits it. There's too much sugar in our diet, and this is what happens. Very freshly new erupted upper central incisor in the mouth of a 7-year-old. That tooth has been in the mouth only for a few months. This is a perfectly normal, healthy tooth. The shape is normal, the enamel is perfect. But then what happens? What happens here? And this goes a lot with what you want to talk about, Craig, is the way we eat today is virtually impossible to avoid sugars in our diet. And this is what happens with 21st century diet. These photos are the photos that I took myself. All these photos are my photos. These photos on this side of the screen are from the mouth of a 19-year-old girl. She's a smart girl. She came to me, she thought she only had one cavity. Well, these are all decayed. This one, we were able to remineralize it with fluoride. I'll address that a little bit later. This one, I was able to put a fill in there. But the irony, she thought this was her only cavity, is I had to do a root canal treatment on that tooth. The rest of her mouth was all like that. She is not an exception. She belongs to the 69% of 19-year-olds in USA that have tooth decay. Imagine. So, what can we do to rebalance the ecosystem of our mouth? There's a number of things we can do. When it comes to oral health, timing and frequency are critical. They are more critical than the amount of sugar we eat. So if you want to begin to rebalance the ecosystem of your mouth, it's important to, if you're going to indulge with sweets, please eat them as dessert. And the reason behind that is when you eat a meal, you have a lot of saliva flowing through your mouth, and on top of it, you're more likely to go brush your teeth after. A good frequency also, eat only 3 meals a day. I know it goes probably against some of your beliefs that grazing is much better for your health. When it comes to oral health, it is not the case. Grazing is quite fatal to oral health. And one little rule that's kind of fun to play with is the 10 to 20%. Allow yourself 10 to 20% of naughtiness into your diet. So why not? So if you abide by the rule of only 3 meals a day, that means you consume 21 meals every week, which means applying the rule of 10 to 20%, allowing yourself to eat the foods you really crave for, like a bowl of Cheerios in the morning or some ice cream or chocolate in the evening. You can do so 2 to 4 meals every week if you eat 21 meals per week. So that's a rule that's kind of fun to play with. Now when it comes to rebalancing, I only have one equation, and it's this. It's xylitol plus fluoride equals synergy. Years ago, there was a very big study conducted with pregnant women. There was a large group of pregnant women that was divided in 3 subgroups. And these were women from inner cities. Their oral ecosystem was out of balance, and they were expecting. They divided in 3 subgroups, and they gave xylitol to the first group. They gave fluoride to the second group, and they gave a chlorhexidine rinse to the third group without changing anything else about their eating habits or anything else. And they followed these women from the time they were pregnant to the time their children reached 6 years of age. And what they found was astonishing, is at age 6, the children of the women who had consumed xylitol during and after their pregnancy had the least amount of tooth decay in their mouth. And the fluoride group didn't do as well, and the chlorhexidine group didn't do as well. Now, to speak to fluoride, I know fluoride has a really bad reputation, but I'd like to speak in favor of fluoride. What fluorides do is really interesting. It adsorbs into the enamel. So it doesn't absorb completely through it. It doesn't just adhere to the surface. It goes somewhat into the enamel. And because it's negatively charged, it attracts the calcium and the phosphate that flows naturally into the saliva. And therefore, it helps remineralize the teeth after an acid attack. So basically what fluoride does is it turbocharges the remineralization process of the enamel after an acid attack. But it has poor antibacterial qualities. So this is why the group of those women who were given only fluoride, because their microbiome, their oral microbiome was so out of whack, the fluoride was not enough to help them achieve what the group of women with xylitol achieved. What we know now from these types of studies is when you combine xylitol with fluoride, then you really have a good synergy. On one hand, you have the xylitol that inhibits the transmission from mother to baby. It inhibits the adhesion or the adherence of the bacteria to the teeth, and it reduces their number. And you combine that with something that turbocharges the remineralization process of the teeth, you have really, really a great action. So this is one great equation to remember if you're thinking that you need to rebalance the ecosystem of your mouth. Now, in the older days, and perhaps today still in some parts of the world, the miners relied on canaries to stay alive. I want you to pay attention to how closely these miners are looking at this canary. They are really examining it really closely. The miners didn't wait until the canary was on its back in rigor mortis to escape the mine. They paid attention to the behavior of the canary. If its song changed or if it stopped singing, they exited the mine right away. Today, when I look in the mouth of people, I think of teeth as canaries in the mine. I think our teeth are trying to give us a really strong message on what's happening elsewhere in the body, on what's happening if there's signs of caries in the mouth, of questioning, is there something else happening in your pancreas? Or is there something happening in your liver right now? How much is your brain being messed up with what's happening, those signs that I see in your mouth? So there's a big connection there, and I really suggest that we start paying attention to our teeth, and we consider them as being predictors of a much bigger problem that exists today in the 21st century. Like Craig mentioned, all that sugar, all those central aisles in the supermarket, look at the labels. There's so much sugar in everything. So much so that the breakfast cereals that we eat in the morning should be considered dessert. The yogurts we eat in the morning too should be considered dessert. What we know is it's impossible to achieve zero sugar, and achieving zero bacteria is really something we don't want to do. We want to preserve the diversity of the oral microbiome, and we want to consume our sugars in a reasonable way. So here are some tips that I want to share with you in ending to help you rebalance your microbiome. Eat 3 times a day. If that doesn't agree with you, consider at least to wait a minimum of 2 hours between meals and snacks. This is to allow your saliva to remineralize. As I mentioned before, there's calcium and phosphate in the saliva, but it takes a long time to rebalance the pH and remineralize the enamel after an acid attack. Think of the 10 to 20%. That's kind of fun to play with. Plan the meals. You can be naughty and enjoy them. Regain balance with xylitol and fluoride. Use them in combination. What we know scientifically from the studies we've done is that with 8 to 10 grams of xylitol per day, you can really reduce the number of harmful bacteria in your mouth. And there's a company here in Provo that's called Epic. They produce a gum. I really like them because they tell you exactly how much xylitol there is in each piece of gum. There's 1 gram per piece of gum. So it makes it very simple. You chew 2 pieces 4 times a day and you have your 8 grams of xylitol. It's this simple. Don't need a prescription. You just buy it at Whole Foods here in Park City. And make sure you use fluoride in your toothpaste, so therefore you have the synergetic combination. Wait 2 hours minimum between meals. Where am I? Choose water. It's the best beverage. I did this on purpose, but I'm confusing myself now. Disrupt the biofilm with brush and floss after each meal. And I underlined floss because if you only brush, you are disrupting only 60% of the biofilm. And with me, that's a failing grade. I'm really sorry. And remember, sweet drinks are really only good for hummingbirds.